Welcome to another episode of My Cousin Innie, where we talk about the show Severance from Apple TV. I'm Jamie G, and I'm here with my co-host Magna Mills to talk about the fifth episode of season two, Trojan's Horse.
And we can only hope that the next episode is called Magnum's Dong, both for that would work for me nicely, and that would be a nice It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference. We like that, and we hope that you will like this episode of My Cousin Innie. We are presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. You can find us on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Same place on the web, dudeswatchstuff.com. Simple and easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please remember to hit the thumb.
From this point forward, there's gonna be spoilers, all right? It's a full-on spoiler show for all episodes of Severance, as well as any of the articles, the podcasts, the interviews. If it's out there, you name it, we might spoil it. First and only warning happening right here, right now. And if you don't know, now you know. We always begin by acknowledging the folks who made the episode.
This is Trojan's Horse, Season 2, Episode 5, the 14th overall episode of Severance, directed by Sam Donovan. This is his second directing credit on Severance, written by Megan Ritchie. This is her first written by credit on the show. Guest stars include Olafur Dari Olafsson as Mr. Drummond, Robbie Benson as Doctor, Karen Aldridge as Asal Ragabi, Sydney Cole Alexander as Natalie Kalin, Claudia Robinson as Felicia, and Rachel Addington as Elizabeth. The short plot synopsis is tensions emerge after the team suffers a loss. And they did suffer a loss here, man. Let's get right into our overall thoughts on this one. Checking in with everybody this episode, jumping around a little bit. Big difference from episode 4. What did you think of Trojan's Horse?
Yeah, it felt like that classic episode of just trying to put it back together after a big wow episode where they really kind of went out there in terms of how they did it with episode four. So it's kind of felt like needed to kind of reground everything, check in with the Audis, see what the heck's going on with Mark with the reintegration, see what's going on with Mark's sister. We haven't seen her in a minute, right? And then of course all the fallout from what happened at the outing. And so I thought it was a really good episode, but more of kind of a chess piece setup episode, just kind of tying everything back together. Good one. Wasn't necessarily surprised by anything in here. Great job by the actress who plays Helly. She's doing a fantastic job, kind of now really making you believe that it's Helly, not Helena, right? And I thought that was really cool. Looking back, you could kind of see little subtle differences that maybe you didn't catch until you knew. So it's pretty cool to kind of see her be able to flip flop like that back and forth. But yeah, overall good episode, man. I mean, it was kind of I think they needed to do that. Last episode was pretty wild, so good kind of bring it back home episode.
Right, you kind of got to chill it down after you heat it up like that, just kind of like fried chicken and bourbon, if you will, is at least according to Raylan Givens. Yeah, it's a high-end chess piece moving episode here. Pretty classic kind of structure for a mid-season episode for a show like this. Definitely enjoyed it. You get to check in with just about everybody except the goats here. Move some stuff forward. We get a couple of new things introduced here, most notably Irving and Bert finally coming together a little bit. I think people have been waiting for that. Another thing I've been waiting for is to get more insight into the inner workings of Lumen. I'm not here to side with our corporate overlords or anything, but I do find all of the Lumen stuff just really fascinating, and I'm kind of curious as to how it all works behind the curtains here. So I would like to see more of that. It seems like we're going to, so very excited about that. No real complaints. Again, it doesn't have that single wow moment. They have learned from loss. They are very good at going out and kind of, it's not necessarily a cliffhanger here, but every time, I don't want them to keep using the reintegration. That's two out of the last three episodes we've kind of done the end of the episode with Mark remembering something. And if, I don't know, maybe that's just the way it's going to be. Not that bad or anything, but I think there are a lot of similarities between this one and episode 3. Nothing wrong with that. They're both kind of, again, structured. You get some indie stuff, you get some outie stuff, you get a little bit behind the scenes at Lumen, a little bit of intrigue, a couple of answers. So again, a nice mix here, very solid mid-season episode. Very happy with it, and just keep doing what you're doing, show.
Yeah, and I will say too that it just, as always, looked great. There's some incredible shots. They're doing such a great job directing this. Looks good, sounds good, and some of the just the contrast with the white and the colors and just it just works so well, man. So did a lot of really good shots in there as well. To switch gears here, though, Mills, just a smidge. let's talk about grinding our gears. Now that we've seen episode five, anything that's still hanging out there from episode four that bothered you that we didn't get an answer to, or that you're still kind of like, what's happening? Like, what's grinding those gears?
I think that a lot of the sloppiness and unanswered stuff makes sense. It seems Milchek kind of just made this up on the fly. So that does explain a little bit, at least, of why things were the way they were. The one thing I still don't get is how did they leave the park? Everyone seems to like have been cut off right about the time Irving was, very quickly after they turned Helly on. And she doesn't even seem to necessarily, I don't know if she remembers anything other than the water. Mark was kind of holding her and drying her off or whatever. I don't know if she remembered that. But Mark's Audi obviously doesn't remember leaving the park. He just finds out he fell off a rope to get wet or whatever. But how did they get him there then, right? They must be able to turn him off or knock them out. There's got to be some way that they transition them because this is a real place. I mean, there's no point that the board says it's real. If it's not real, then we're into Westworld territory. So I'm not cool with that. So I just have to assume this was real. And somehow they got them from there back to the building or wherever they picked up their Audis or what I'm assuming the building. I don't know how that works. Again, if you're not going through the elevator, how do they turn them on or off? Is it though, if we're, again, a lot of questions here. So that is hanging out there a little bit for me. How about yourself? Is there anything kind of, still hanging out there from episode four that you wanted to get an answer to here that you didn't?
Yeah, the hasteness, the sloppiness of it, but we still don't know how they got a video and a TV to work out there. It wasn't plugged into anything. We still don't know kind of, like you said, how they got there, how they left. The fact that nobody remembers on either side is concerning. So, and then where was Milchek? Like, where did he sleep? Like where, like where, like what was up with it? Like those are, I know they're little things, but they're things that bother me because it's just like he just came out of nowhere. Um, those are things that I don't know that we'll get answers to, but it's certainly it's grinding my gears a little bit because I want to know so bad, and I think that's a compliment to the show that they got me so intrigued.
I will say the TV thing is battery is a pretty easy answer for that. That's technology that exists. You could just have a battery pack to run that off or something like that. And then in one shot,
But
you
how'd
could
they
kind of
get it out
tell.
there? And then what they do with
Getting it
it?
out there, yes. I mean, how did it operate? A battery is pretty. Yes, how did they get it out there? I'll give you that one. But operating like it could be running off a battery. That's not really that insane. And it did look in one of the shots when Milchek came kind of running around and they went to a different angle. It did look like there were tents for Miss Wang and Milchek there, kind of around the corner from where they were. So that's where he slept. Again, should there have been more people there? There are a ton of questions like that logistically. But from the way the board made it sounds like Milchek kind of just threw this together on his own. So maybe there really wasn't. He was just kind of half-assed it and they really could have died or something. So that is kind of crazy that they even let him get away with it, which is, probably why his performance review goes poorly. But let's save that a little bit. How about the opening with the
One more thing, Mills. One more thing was just that their versions of themselves that were showing them the way. I just kind of want to know, A, did they just have that technology? If Milchek really just threw this together on a whim, so he just had that on the ready to be like, oh, well, we'll just hologram
I'm
in
assuming
versions of
they no,
themselves
I'm
that can.
assuming they just hired actors who looked like them. Because they're not exactly the same if you see them closer up, you know what I mean? They're like someone who looks like you kind of, but they're not exact copies. So I'm assuming that they just found people close enough and put some hair and makeup on them or whatever and tried to do their best job, something like that. But I don't think they're actually clones or robots or anything.
Yeah, but either way, I think it's a decent sized lift if you're just haphazardly putting together so anyway,
Yeah,
just
no,
lots of
yeah, you're
questions
not
there.
you're not wrong. Then that one I don't know if we will get an explanation. Same thing with the weird animals out there. Is that part of the park? So maybe we'll come back to there, maybe we won't. But my guess is that's not something. If we do get an answer to it, my guess is it won't be right away. So maybe that's a tease for later seasons down the road, that kind of thing. And we actually opened the episode with another tease with this is the guy credited as a doctor. He's getting those creepy dental tools, and then he goes down to, the exports hall, the testing floor, whatever you want to call it, the elevator at the end of the dark hallway. I did my best looking at zooming in as much as you could with the shots of the long hallway. It does not look like somebody we know already. I think initially when we're first doing it, I'm like, oh, is this a flashback to Irving and when he used to work there or something? But we see Felicia, who we know from O&D. It looks like it's now. So I think they went out of their way to put her there to be like, all right, this is happening within the current timeline as we're seeing it. Any thoughts on this? Do you think it's going to be somebody we know? I know Petey was floated out as a theory. If Miss Casey's alive, why couldn't he be alive? Otherwise, I don't know. I think they're just kind of hiding his face to build the tension here. I don't think it's going to be somebody we already know. How about yourself? Do you think they were just hiding the face to build some mystery, or do you think they're doing it deliberately to obscure the face of somebody we know?
It's tough because they do a lot of things deliberately, so it makes you think they are. But I think here it was just kind of to build some intrigue. I didn't really know what to expect here. They focused in on the creepiness of the cart and the whistle, and then obviously those beautiful blue shelves or whatever they were, where they pulled out the and listening to the voice, it didn't sound like Irving either when he said, do you have it? With the scalpels and everything. So I think they're probably just trying to build some intrigue and be like, what the hell is this? And then, there's enough there. So if they take an episode or two and then come back to it, we'll remember because there was that intrigue. That's kind of my best guess here.
I think that's probably right. And again, just the actor they cast, I believe is somebody I've seen in other stuff before, kind of a well enough, known name. I think it could be someone in the fact that they call it Doctor and not Man in Hall or Man with Cart or something like that, where they could be a little bit more vague. I'm leaning towards it. It will be somebody that we have not met before. Kind of creepy that they have that many dental tools, right? What are you doing with that many dental tools?
I don't know, but I certainly don't want to be the patient. That was a whole lot of scalpels.
No, and that's when you get into I guess some of the theories about cloning and stuff, like they're trying to copy people's dental records or something like that. So they have to, or torture is the other thing you get into the dental tools. So hopefully it's none of those things. I know there were a lot of theories about the tune that the doctor was whistling, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. You can do a deep dive into that if you want. We're not going to get into all that here. It's one of the great things about the show that you can take something like a tune that a guy is just randomly whistling, a character we don't even know, and build entire theories out of it. So super cool stuff if you want to go ahead and theorize that. We're not going to get into that here. We're not as musically inclined enough to do so. How about that stuff Mark is drinking? That's really weird. There's 9 jars of it in his fridge. I legitimately could not figure out what it was by his acting. I'm assuming it's disgusting. That's got to have something to do with the reintegration, right? He's being forced to drink this, I have to assume.
Well, that and I think taking that medicine too, whatever that was. But dude, to me, the only thing I could possibly think of here is it kind of looked like sea moss gel. And so, people will drink that. There's health benefits, there's vitamins and things you can get out of sea moss gel, and it kind of had that same look. That's the only thing I paused it a couple times and like zoomed in to try to see what it was. The only thing I could possibly think of was sea moss gel.
I don't really know too much about that, so I will take your word for it. He also does back up the idea here that they were just told that they were going on a weekend retreat. Made it, I guess, seem kind of normal. He mentions the thing about falling off the rope here. Not really a big surprise there. I will say the fact that Ragabi is staying with him is kind of a surprise. Is this a thing we have to have every season? Somebody stays in Mark's basement. And do you think they're being watched? I always assumed they were, to be perfectly honest with you. But thinking about it, it didn't seem like they knew what Cobell was doing as Mrs. Selvig last year. So maybe they're not. I don't know. What do you think? And do you think they really are being watched, or has Mark played it dumb enough?
I don't know that they're being watched yet, but whether she's there or not, it actually wouldn't surprise me if they are, just because of everything that happened to start this season and to end last season, right? I mean, we saw Milchek going out there. We know something's going on. I just don't know if the one big enforcer dude's enough to handle all this. I mean, we're talking about now trying to spy on multiple Audis, get stuff figured out on what we need multiple people here, and we just don't. They probably need more bodies because we haven't really seen anybody other than the big enforcer dude, um, Helena, and then Natalie. So I don't know that 3 people are enough to spy on, all the crew and figuring out the comings and goings of all their lives. So I'm thinking they're not right now, but
I just assumed they had cameras and bugs and all that kind of that they were using technology for a lot of it. And you hear Ragabi say that they have people at the morgue. So I assume that they just have like the post office, you know what I mean? Basically, everybody there is reporting back to Lumen, kind of. I just assumed that. They go to the grocery store, the workers, I just that kind of controlled environment. So that was kind of my assumption, not necessarily that it's all human intelligence with actual spies on the ground. But especially with all the stuff that's gone on with Mark, they seem to know so much about him. why wouldn't they just have somebody living across the street from him too? You know what I mean? Like his neighbor, that kind of thing. I think
Well,
you kind of
we saw
waited
that with
Mrs.
with
Covell,
season
but
one.
Lumen didn't know that though. That's the weird part about it, right? Because they seemed surprised that that was happening. I don't, I don't know. So maybe they're not monitoring their own employees, just the innies. I think you can dig into it a little bit. In as far as whatever, Mark probably should get his dryer fixed one way or the other. But do you think Ragabi is slow rolling him here? Like he keeps, oh, when we're going to do more, when we're going to do more. Did they even have to do more? Is this maybe just how it's going to unfold, kind of slowly, and she's just trying to buy time to let it happen? Do you think she really wants to wait because she's worried about him? What do you think here? I kind of felt to me like she was stalling a little bit, but she was going through all of Gemma's stuff for some reason too. So I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I don't know, like slow rolling his expectations, I think is probably the answer because his expectations, you remember when she first asked him, he no questions asked, he was like, yes, right now, let's do it. Right. So I mean, he's clearly not thinking about what's the safest thing, what's the best way to go about it, right? So I think she's trying to kind of monitor that and just create the proper expectation with him. But then also I think she's not learning as she's going, but I think she knows she needs to kind of have an environment set up for this to be successful. And I think that's why we saw her kind of digging through some of Gemma's stuff and trying to find enough things here to really, get something out of it other than just putting them through the process.
I think she needs to keep an eye on him too. I think she's worried about this for some reason. I don't think that she's still
Yeah.
secretly in league with Lumen or anything like that, but it does feel like there's another shoe to drop, that she has another agenda here. I don't know exactly what it is, but she's certainly really invested in this, and I don't think it's obviously solely just for the sake of Mark's well-being. I'm curious to see where they go with that. I think we'll probably get some development on it soon. What did you think about the Helena stuff that we get in this episode? She gets the big meeting here, and she kind of gets not necessarily dressed down by Mr. Drummond and Natalie, but she seems pretty relieved when they're not going to tell her father. It is a really kind of weird, like, you're not going to tell my parents dynamic here still, considering she's supposed to be the CEO in waiting of the biggest corporation on the planet or what have you. So, kind of curious about the dynamic here. It's really interesting.
We talked about it a little bit in episode one or whatever. I didn't think Mr. Drummond had this much weight. I didn't think he had this much pull. We see it twice in this episode, both with Helena and then later on with Milchek during his formal review. I didn't think he had that much weight, and he
No, because he was at the
clearly
diner, like
does.
eavesdropping, right? Like doing like kind of lower level,
Right.
kind of just observational work. And
Henchman
here he
type
seems to be
stuff.
like
Right.
right, like here he's giving performance reviews and everything. So I don't. Did he get a bump up? And this also episode confirms that all of this has taken place really since the season one premiere over I don't know 4 to 6. It hasn't even been a whole week. Bert calls it a couple of nights ago. So this is all really compressed. So I don't think he got a big promotion recently either. You know what I mean? In between episodes.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Interesting how Helena plays it. I get the impression, especially because of the way she laughed at the Dieter story in the previous episode, she doesn't really believe in this, right? When he's telling her that, oh, the doctors think that your tempers are going to come back into alignment soon. Some of this definitely reminds me just straight up Scientology, more or less, and especially when she mentions the obligation session. That sounds an awful lot like auditing in Scientology. I don't know what else it could be really. So this is a weird combination of basically Scientology or similar religion and corporate culture. It's fascinating and scary.
Very scary, very fascinating. Cult-ish. Um, yeah, I mean, in the words that they use, it's funny because they're so poignant about the words they use, and then Milchek got knocked for using too many big words. But it seems like a perfect fit for Lumen. Anyway, I found that to be ironic and interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's clearly something going on here, and I think she doesn't believe it and wants the rebellion. And that's why you're seeing kind of her innie just automatically go to the rebellion. And it may also be why you saw her, move forward with her feelings with Mark and almost tell him there. So
Yeah, you wonder what impact the mental state of the Audi has and how their innie is, right? What is they keep hinting at they're obviously, they're part of the same person, so they have to be connected in some way. They can't be completely severed. That's probably one of the defining questions of the show, even if they're not able to really answer it. In her defense, two innies have tried to kill her, right? You got her innie trying to kill her, and Irving trying to kill her, so she's not wrong to be a little bit tenuous about going back down there. I can't say that I blame her, especially because It looks like they've really hit the gas on Cold Harbor. And this is one thing I can't tell. When did this actually start? Because it seemed like they were working on other projects in season one. So this seems newer. Is this just started when since Ms. Casey disappeared, basically, I'm assuming? But Mark's working through it pretty quick. He gets through like 4 or 5% in this episode, roughly, I think.
Right. Right. So it's getting quick. And is it just him, or is it when Dylan's doing the work? Is that all going into Cold Harbor? I mean, those are
Right. Does their stuff even matter? Is it, because Dylan, it seemed to matter more, right, for everyone else in season one. And here, you don't really hear about the team's percentages anymore. It's just all about Mark doing his thing. So I'm just going to assume that this changed at some point, that they were doing something that was similar but different. And now it's become this very specific thing where it's all about Cold Harbor. They're just going to have to pay it off, right? If they're going to put this much pressure on it, both from a viewer standpoint and from Lumen. I mean, dude says it's going to be one of the biggest things to ever happen in the history of the planet. That's a
yeah,
statement.
that's a big statement, dude.
You can't really
Big,
make
big,
many
big
bigger
statement.
statements. That's about as something with planetary impact is just got to be
About as
something
big as it
wild.
gets.
Yeah, it literally doesn't get much bigger. But that just shows you how important Mark is, right? They're willing to send Helly back down there unless that secretly is somebody trying to get rid of her. Is this part of a, you know what I mean? Is that maybe why they're letting all this happen? Somebody else wants in on the CEO in waiting position, and they're secretly trying to rub her out. In corporate culture, especially something like this big of a behemoth, it doesn't seem impossible that there's maybe another faction or something like that.
No, not at all. And you never know. I mean, that we haven't gotten anything other than like that, like one or two words the father said to her, right? So we really don't know if there's a little succession-ish going on here where, can't stand your own kids, so you don't want to give them the thing, and or you're trying to put them through all the tests. Maybe this is the ultimate, is this punishment? All those sorts of things are going through my head when it comes to Helena.
And I wonder just a touch if maybe her father isn't in the greatest health right now, and that's why they don't want to tell him all this. Like they're worried about anything that could push. He seemed okay when we saw him in season one, but it is curious that we haven't really gotten anything else here. So I guess we'll have to see how that works. How about the stuff we actually get on the severed floor? We'll get to the funeral in a minute. I did like that scene we got initially when everybody comes back. First, I'd shout out Helly, who had the absolute right reaction to Miss Wang. Who the fuck are you? Just the way, and that's when you could tell Helly is back, right? That initial
Yeah.
reaction right there, like, oh yeah, that's our Helly reacting to Miss Wang right there. That's exactly how you would expect her to react.
Well, that's in theory, that's the first time she's seen her, right? So I mean,
Right. And
that's
that's the proper reaction. Right. And I think, yeah, because I don't know. We definitely did see Helly react to her, but it wasn't right off the elevator in the season premiere. So I guess maybe it was she did a good enough job acting, but I think it feels right on the nose here, perfectly done. How about Milchek's love of blue here? Is it just a little bit too much? I mean, he's got the blue on blue in the blue office. The only thing he's not doing is playing the song Blue.
yeah, it's a sharp look. They're different tones, but it might just be a smidge too. I wouldn't mind some gray, or even a pink, something to balance off that blue.
It's a lot of blue, but it's a very interesting scene. One of the things I think they teased everybody with is when he's just about to explain the Glasgow block, and then Helly cuts him off. We're all like, "No, he's going to explain something." For once in the history of the show, the dude is just going to flat out explain what something is, and we don't get it. I was so close there. And again, another good job here of showing how Mark, and we're going to see this throughout the episode, just he doesn't trust himself now, right? He's like, "Well, I don't. How do I know you're not Helly?" And this kind of runs throughout. It's Irving called him out on the last episode, right? He was too close and he couldn't tell when something was wrong. And we thought maybe that would be something that carried through, and it definitely looks like it has here. And even at the end of the episode, he still seems really, put off by it.
Yeah, he definitely is.
One of the things I loved here is everybody just yelling at Milchek to explain what's going on. That feels really meta by the writer's room. Like, you need to tell me what's going on right now. That literally feels like they just looked at all the fans, comment board posts and tweets and all that kind of thing, and we're like, oh yeah, we need to get on that. And I love, especially Milchek describes, and I badly butcher it, the Grant Kapan or whatever it was. Apparently, he really did mispronounce that absolutely terribly. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or not. Knowing this show, it could go either way.
He says it two times, though, which is interesting. The same way, two or three actually.
Right. Again, a
So
show that's so specific in its language makes me wonder, but what he describes do they think like this is undercover boss, right? This is just undercover boss Lumen. That's literally what they're doing.
Uh,
I'm not wrong, right? I mean, that's undercover boss.
it's been, yeah, it's that's what it is. I mean, it's been done before. It's undercover boss. It's,
Apparently, it was invented a long time ago. You know, that's no real surprise there. Most American shows not that creative. And apparently, we hear it again here. It came up in episode 4. Ether factories were a real thing. There are definitely different kinds of ether here. We're assuming this is diethol, which is more or less commonly used as an anesthetic. So I guess that goes back to maybe Lumen having some background in the medical fields and that kind of thing. And I give Irving, or excuse me, I give Milchek a little bit of credit here. He does actually admit that Irving isn't coming back. It was even
yeah.
Mark kind of reacts like, "Oh, somebody finally told the truth." I think it was interesting, especially we'll talk about it in a little bit here with the performance review. But Milchek definitely seems to be more on the side of the innies than we previously would have thought. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah, I think you're starting to see Milchek maybe battle with walking the fine line of not being, being an outie and knowing everything, and then also how you treat the innies and what they're going through. So I think it's a moral journey for him, and you see it more than you do with any other employee from Lumen. Cobell, now we're learning this is some sort of like life's mission, like some sort of thing that she believes so deeply in, she'll sacrifice anything to do it, but we don't really know what's driving Milchek, right? Is it just a career? That's an interesting kind of human nature that we haven't gotten out of really anybody that works for Lumen.
And Milchek doesn't quite flip it all the way, but the dynamic changes a touch when they go to the new office. And I have to admit, it was kind of sad to see that instead of replacing Irving, they just went from 4 workstations to 3. Just again, just everything feels just a touch off here. And I think in a way that it was supposed to, even like the quick Photoshop job they did on the picture, they didn't normally they would have done a better job, resetting it, maybe changed the background, and you could tell they just basically erased Irving and they had to kind of do it all on the fly. And Dylan, I love what he's doing here, very feisty until Milchek points out that certain, privileges or perks can be removed. He shuts up real quick. Mark does pick up on that. And Mark's also kind of defeated here. He's, oh, we can have a funeral if it's short. He wants to get right to work. Why is that? Does he know something more about Cold Harbor now, or is he just really like what he tells Ellie? He just feels defeated. They're watching. They know everything we're trying to do. Why even bother? I'm just going to do my job and go home.
Dylan's lucky that so much was going on when that slipped out and nobody picked up on it and questioned it. And that's where you need an Irving, because it feels like Irving would have picked right up on that and been like, wait a minute, what privileges you have? But yeah, Mark's at a point right now where he's just like in a full-blown depression. And I wondered, but when he hits Helly with it, like you said, where he's like, everything we worked on, it doesn't matter anymore because you told them everything. So they know everything. It kind of feels like maybe that's just been the final dagger where he just stopped caring. I don't know because the reintegration's going on. That's the only thing that's like maybe he's not letting on, but they've shown the little bits here and there that's happened so far regarding the reintegration when he saw Gemma's face when he was with Helly and everything else. So I don't know. I think he just is feeling just ultimately like there's no hope.
I think that is pretty much spot on there. And no spoilers for Breaking Bad here, but all of a sudden, Mark has acquired Walter White's cough, has he not?
Yeah, he has.
Get it
He
about
really,
three
really
different
has.
times
What is
throughout the
going on with
episode.
this?
And when he goes into the bathroom, you can see he puts the cold compress on his neck. I wonder if it's something with reintegration in the chip causing some kind of physical discomfort, maybe. And again, great scene in the bathroom with him and Helly and her trying to dial in. It does seem that if he would have asked, she would have told him the truth about being an Egan, but he doesn't even want to ask. I think it's just because he can't trust himself, right? He just feels there's no way I'm ever going to be able to tell who she is, so I'm not even going to try. That's what I took from it, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, and that he's telling us that, but it's also you can kind of see it in him the way he's looking at her. There was one moment where he looked at her and kind of smiled, like that he still likes her, but he just doesn't know. And I thought her reaction was so real and so powerful, and she's fighting back tears and basically, telling him you're just gonna have to trust me. And it'll be interesting to see if he actually does or doesn't.
Well, you think it's bad now. She was already disappointed that he couldn't tell it wasn't her. Wait till he finds out what they did.
Yeah, when as soon as she finds out that happened. It's going to be and Milchek already dangled
Yeah,
that
that's
carrot.
gonna yeah, that's what Milchek is gonna be kind of hanging over his head the whole time. The carrot or the stick. That is the stick I am assuming there. In Irving's funeral, may or may not be part of my award tour here. Loved everything with this. Whenever Lumen does some kind of special occasion, it's always at least really interesting, if not fun. And I guess they usually call it the bereavement kit instead of the retirement. And this happens when an innie dies on the floor. It happens enough that they have a process for it. I guess that's something we should keep in mind. And yeah, I'm assuming it's not because of old age, So how many of these do they have to have? I love that Irving had a high 60s score in the affections index. And that's what I
Yeah,
mean. If Flumin is keeping stats like this on their employees, they have to be monitoring them more or less 24/7. I just
yeah,
feel that. They just almost has to. But again, you look back at some of the weird technology. Again, they're using the walkie-talkies here. There's no texting. It's a weird way to go, especially, they have all these crazy code readers that can read words written inside of your body, that they're still using walkie-talkies. Interesting stuff there. All the choices they make are. We see Miss Wang coming out of her shell a little bit here when she asks if she can say a question. Still curious why she didn't just say, "May I ask a question?" But she tells Milchek straight up, "Don't let them have a funeral. It makes them feel like people." That
makes him
is,
feel human.
it's weird, from especially disconcerting from a, maybe a child, young adult, but I'm not sure exactly how old she's supposed to be here. But that is downright creepy here. Like, you should use them as subhuman. That's wild from a child. I don't know if she's grown up in the cult of Lumen, or she's fully indoctrinated, or I don't know what's going on here, but she seems like a true believer.
Yeah, I think she's all in and it'll be interesting if we find out that she was placed there by Lumen to keep Milchek in line because that's how much the company values her loyalty. It'll be really interesting to see if that was Milchek's decision or not and as we learn more about that. But yeah, I found this interaction to be just Milchek's pressing forward. I love the unsolicited question, right? That wasn't a question, that was an opinion, unsolicited at that. They're working together, but there's a lot of animosity here, right?
Oh,
And
100%.
I think Milchek's trying to say, okay, we'll give them a tiny little thing. We promised them all these changes. Let's give them the tiny little thing and move on so we can get back to work. But yeah, it's interesting. This is the first time we really saw her have this level of just kind of confidence in what she's doing to where maybe she has more pull than Milchek.
Again, I don't want to put it all in Game of Thrones terms, but they're definitely pulling it. What feels like they're giving Milchek Jaime Lannister's arc, kind of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's going. It's the opposite of the heel turn. He kind of started out maybe misunderstood by us, because it seems that almost all of his problems here, other than his paperclip issue and the fact that he owns the dictionary, stem from him trying to make things a little bit better for the Innies, for treating them like humans. So you are right. That is really interesting. Maybe it would make sense to put a true believer there to see if that's, if he really is a true believer. You even hear them mention that they thought, we'll talk about it again. We're almost at the performance review, but they were happy with the way he accepted those paintings. You point out the weird technology here: dot matrix printers and 8-bit animation. Irving's little thing, it basically looks literally like a Nintendo game. I'm assuming that's what they went for, a Nintendo game, a Sega Genesis game, something like that. And we see that Irving was only there for 12 quarters. That tracks. I do remember him saying he was there for 3 years, but it feels like he's worked at Lumen longer than that. Maybe he's just been on MDR for 3 years, but we will see. And they're definitely going to be selling those coffee mugs with Irving's face on them if they're not already, I'm assuming. So I had probably buy one of those.
Those are definitely great. Yeah, that paper. I mean, I remember having that paper and feeding it into the computer and then
Oh,
peeling
getting
off the
paper cuts
sides,
trying to pull those
perforated
little.
sides. Yeah, just I mean, we're talking about now. That's got to be 30 plus years old. That
Yeah, it's mid
technology.
80s tech. They had inkjet printers 94-ish or something. Not matrix printers, yeah. Heavy 80s technology, 70s, 80s. That was just how they did it back in the day, because they had to scroll up. So that's initially how it worked there.
I did enjoy the Lumen with the Irving walking around and the little what looked to be like a video game or something that
Yeah,
was
the 8-bit animation, the old school. Yeah.
and dude, where are they getting? I mean, they had black watermelon just sitting around. You know how hard that is, and what type of art? to sculpt Irvin's face in that watermelon. Holy cow.
I'm only upset because we got it in the trailer.
Isn't there something weird about eating him, the act of actually? And I love how they had that one shot with Mark as he's sitting there staring at it, and then he eats it, and you're like, yeah, you're eating him. It's
On
kind of
top
an
of that, all right,
interesting.
say you're in that position and you have to eat it because you're going to offend the host or get in trouble or something. Where do you start? That head is sitting in front of you. Where do you? I guess I would go
I'm
for
not
like
eating
the
the
back
head.
of the
I'm eating
neck or
the I'm
somewhere
eating the
behind
stuff
the
around the
ear.
sides.
Or
Yeah, I mean, if you have to eat the head, I'm going lower neck, back jowl area. I'm not.
right, I
I'm
was
trying
waiting
to
for
eat the
someone to
other
just go and
stuff.
just like rip the nose off or something. Like I'm just going to go right in through the front door.
That's tough, man.
Let me ask you, did you pick up on the hang in there thing? At the very end of the last episode, it's the last thing Irving tells Dylan, hang in there. I have to say, I did not get it the first time through. When he found it, then I did put two and two together, but I did not pick up on it ahead of time. How about yourself? Did you see that coming?
Yeah, I picked up when he said it, I knew there was going to be something. And then as soon as I saw the sign, I was like, oh, so I didn't know ahead of time that the sign was there until this episode, but I did know that was going to be something. It was the last thing he said, and they even showed it in kind of the preview leading up to this episode. So I knew that was going to be important, but pretty cool that he left it there for him. And I like that he looked at it, put it right back behind the picture. He was not taking that one with him.
And yeah, I'm very curious as to what he will do with that. I also love Dylan's eulogy. And let's be honest, in my funeral, if somebody said, for the least fun guy in the world, he was really fun, I'd probably take that.
That's a compliment.
I wouldn't even mind he put the dick in contradiction. That's whatever. You get a good dick joke at your funeral. I'll take it.
What about if he told you, you'd have a right to tell him to suck your own fuck? I mean, that's pretty remarkable too.
That might be the biggest plot hole in the entire show. Where did Dylan learn how to curse? We've seen no one else with this affinity, and it's legitimately like he switched bodies with early 2000s Ryan Reynolds at sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
He
that's
loves cursing,
exactly.
dude. That's
He
that's
does
his
it
whole
so
jam.
well. He does it way too well. I'm really that has to come from somewhere, right? It works great for the show. I am just extremely curious as to. I don't think it's something we'll ever get an answer for, but maybe if we learn a bit more about the nature of the relationship between the innies and the outies, maybe we'll get a little bit of reference. Maybe his outie will never curse and absolutely won't do it. And so his innie feels compelled to something like that. But Dylan does get mad because Mark is kind of like, "Yo, I'm done with this, right? I got to go back. I got work to do." And Dylan takes it so far that he blurts out, tells Helly that Ms. Casey is his wife, and give Helly credit right away. She is like, "Oh, well, we need to find her, right?" Which is definitely not the way Helena or fake Helly or whatever you want to call her acted when we initially approached this back in the season premiere.
Right. She reacted with kind of a level of jealousy and a level of, huh, you're married kind of thing, right? And you see Helly right away. Well, what are we going to do about it? What do like that you could see the difference. But yeah, I think Mark, look, he was being an asshole. And Helly even calls him out for being an asshole later in the episode. But he was, and I think Dylan had enough because it's like Dylan also was projecting the guilt he felt for not listening to Irving. And he wanted everyone to kind of go all in and double down and be there in unity for him. And Mark was like already kind of threw the dagger of, yeah, as long as it's quick, right? When asked about doing the funeral, and now he's leaving, he's like, well, isn't it kind of over? Which is a concept I think every viewer needs to get their head around. It's kind of a big deal, dude. Them not coming back means that person that you spend 5 days a week with is gone. So it's a really interesting angle to think about, but yeah, I think Dylan had every right to be upset, and Mark, was just kind of being a jerk, and he called him out on it. But Mark clearly does not trust Helly anymore and does not want to share anything with her. It's kind of like once you hit it, everything crumbles here. Yeah, they maybe should have just stayed friends here because you really worry about their ability to have any form of good relationship going forward here.
Oh, and she doesn't even know the half of it. And give her credit, as South Park famously made the Chewbacca defense. Here, Helly elects to go with the Shaggy defense when she tells Mark, it wasn't me. That's very classic early 2000 Shaggy right there.
Yeah, wasn't me.
No, I mean, it's not like he got red-handed naked on the bathroom floor or anything like that. So it really wasn't even, you probably didn't even need all of that. I think that kind of takes care of most of that. I will say that's good luck getting to the exports hall or the testing floor or whatever. I believe there were 24 turns on those directions. That's like looking up an old school video game cheat for Nintendo for like a Zelda dungeon or something, and it's like a left,
Down,
right,
down,
right,
over,
left,
over,
right,
A,
long
B.
haul, right, second door on the left. It's like, oh man, this is a. I would. I'd have to write those down in a big piece of paper with maybe a. That's where back in the day you'd print MapQuest with the. Can I also print the maps next to the directions because this can
Yeah.
be a little confusing. So those are
Yep.
some directions.
God, remember printing maps? Like you had to like follow it. That's yeah.
Oh, it was
We
such a
used to do
like
that.
yeah, oh, it was such a fly. I'm old enough to remember when I would go every year and buy the new road atlas, just a big book with all the maps in it of all the interstates in the United States, and I had individual state maps, which I still do actually carry in my car, just in case. Just in case
Just in
somehow
case.
it all goes down. I like my maps, dude. I am old school. And Lumen is kind of old school here. They still do performance reviews in person. I loved everything about this. It made me feel so much sympathy for Milchek that I never thought I was going to feel. And you are right. One of the best gags of the show is the idea that they are looking that his vocabulary is a detriment. And obviously, this just comes from Ms. Huang. And I wonder, is she doing this just because she thinks Milchek's a dick for using all these big words? Or is it kind of like because she's like, yo, I'm a kid. Like, don't use all these words I don't understand.
I think that this is a way to knock him down a peg and for her to flex her dominance over him, as in, I am not just your assistant, I'm the one in control here. And I think that was, attacking his intelligence and how he speaks is a way to kind of do that in a passive aggressive way that works, unfortunately. It's called being a bully. And she kind of bullied him here a little bit.
That's actually somehow less passive aggressive than the paperclip thing. I,
Yeah.
I I'm not going to say I don't have real OCD or anything, but I do have tendencies where I need things to be a certain way. And I have never once in my life worried about whether the paper clip was backwards or forwards. I don't worry about the toilet paper roll, like top or bottom either. So maybe that's just not one of the things that bother me. Like when I leave my house, I have to check the thing, have to check the knob twice and push the door 3 times. Like little stuff like that. But the paperclip thing, have you ever once in your life contemplated whether a paperclip was oriented in the correct direction? Because I didn't even know what that would be.
No, I never. Never. And I started thinking
Never even
about, man,
occurred to
every
me
time
that
I
that
use a
could be a
paperclip,
thing.
I'm probably wrong.
I didn't know that like this is
I thought they
literally, and
were the
I'm
same on both sides.
the one side is longer technically, but I again I know it's fastidious people that incredibly detail oriented people. Never heard of this. People who had to have the staple in the like you want it exactly in this corner, you try to offset it. Like you couldn't even staple like corners like that. But I've never heard of this paperclip thing before. So talk about kind of the absolute passive aggressive minutia, and I referenced it before about the one complimentary thing they start out with is, hey, we really like your reaction to those paintings. Yet we get a scene right before the performance review where he goes up to Natalie and he's like, hey, can you drop the everything for like 1 second and just be honest here? Like, what the hell was going through your minds when you saw those paintings? And great job by the actress here. You can kind of see her like she's trying to, she doesn't quite know what to do, and then this kind of bails like, all right, we got to get in there or whatever. But again, this feels like the first time that Milchek might be really questioning what he's doing there.
He thought he might be able to trust in her. Maybe she would have had a similar reaction, right? And I think they're kind of hitting around that a little bit. And she just doesn't break character at all. And, she does not give him anything with this. And it also just shows that, like, hey, that really bothered him. That really bothered him.
Yeah, I
And
think it was tough to read his reaction, but when he tucked him all the way up in that closet like that, I think that was the real telling. Like, I don't even want to have to think about this.
yeah,
I don't want to take a chance that I'm going to see these accidentally because it might trigger something in me. And again, you good point with the passive aggressiveness. Right at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Drummond's breaking it down. He's like, well, this takes a long time. We'll have to pre-order lunch because it's going to take that long. And then, Milchek's like, well, hopefully we don't have to do that. And he's like, here's the lunch menu. I legitimately laughed pretty hard at that. Super petty, passive aggressive, but I thought that was absolutely hysterical.
yeah. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. And then boom, because they're talking about now more than 4 hours. And he right away he gives it to him with the pen, dude. So it's coming to that. Yeah, this was again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but big shock here that it was Drummond doing it. and the fact that he is seems to be the one in charge here.
Right. He sits right across from him while Natalie is at the end, and I'm assuming monitoring for the board who is listening or watching or whatever, depending on kind of however that works. And one other funny thing here, just the reaction that Milchek has to the too many big words. Well, perchance I may colloquially employ, dude, there has to be a way. Uh, this is a sci-fi show. We can get Seth Milchek and Boyd Crowder in a room, right? I
Gotta
just
be a
want to
way,
hear those
man.
two guys talk. I don't really care who else is there, what they're doing. I want to hear those two gentlemen have a conversation. I want that more than I want just about anything on television.
It would be fantastic. I mean, and honestly, you know, I wouldn't mind if after they kind of do it, somehow Raylan Givens shows up and we get him in there too. I mean,
Well, I was
this would
gonna
be
go.
great.
It could take place at a bar run by Tyrion Lannister, and he's the bartender. Like, no, no,
There you go.
I'm getting very specific and also quite expensive with these cross studio promotional products here, but would be super fun. And again, the pettiness of all this stuff was reported anonymously, despite the fact that we've only seen one person that he actually works with. Just paying off that little kind of pettiness by Ms. Wang earlier in the episode. Interesting phrasing. We always talk about the words they use. He instituted ineffective kindness reforms for innies. And he says, "Oh, I'm no Harmony Cobell." So it's weird, right? In season one, we were meant to feel a little bit of sympathy for Harmony Cobell. Turns out she was the hard ass the whole time. And he's
Yeah.
actually, I mean, kindness reforms, they make it sound like this was against their better judgment. They're like, "No, you shouldn't do that." And he's like, "No, I want to try something different. Like, I really want to try to make it better for them." I can't believe that they've done such a 180 on Milchek's character. The only thing that doesn't track for me is why he was so eager to fire them in the second episode of the season there when Helena leaves it up to him and he just immediately goes to Cannonball. Maybe it's because he thought he was doing the right thing for him. I don't know, but I'm very interesting where this is going from here because it feels like eventually Milchek has got to, if not side with the Innies, at least turn against Lumen.
Yeah, he's got to kind of pick a side here and go to battle. And he's either got to be all in and drink the Kool-Aid, or he's going to kind of rebel a little bit. And so far it's been all in, but now there's just these little cracks in the armor here that make you question it.
Yeah, just these kind of tiny cracks here. And I think this is actually where we get the line about Cold Harbor being one of the greatest moments in the history of the planet. And Milchek will be overseeing that. So that's what they're pitching him on. And again, the way they refer to the Ortbo, I'm not even sure that an Ortbo existed for this. It feels like Milchek might have freestyled the entire concept, or if not the concept, at least the execution of it. Because again, it seems like something that nobody else there would have signed off on except him. I'm just really curious now to why he kind of has this empathy for the innies. We will see where it goes to it. That sets up towards the end here. You know, we go back to Mark. Mark is working, and we heard Ragabi mention before maybe your innie is having some reintegration stuff here. And he does have 1 second. And if you freeze frame it, the picture disappears on the desk with just the three of them. And we see the pills he took in that opening scene. It's the three
Right.
pills he took. And I'm not even sure if those are reintegration oriented or not because they're in a regular pill box. It's been so short of a time. That seems too organized for Ragabi. I feel like he was already taking those pills. So I wonder if they are, again, an antidepressant or something that goes along with the severance process, something like that. Maybe there is a medication that goes with it, like when you get an organ transplant and you have to take an immunosuppressant, something like that. Any thoughts
Right.
on that? Because it's really fast. Unless you freeze frame it perfectly, it's only like one frame where like the picture, it disappears for a frame, then the pills are there for a frame, disappears again, and then the picture's back. Unless you're going frame by frame, you're probably not going to catch it. I was curious. I thought someone else would pop up in the picture, but no, it disappears entirely and it's just three pills.
Yeah, which is really cool and great placement because they intentionally showed those three pills early on in the episode. And so it was really cool to show them come back. So they're signaling how important they are and that there's somehow some way behind what be going on with Mark's Audi here.
Yeah, there's something to them. Put it that way. They can't be just a nothing burger or red herring or something like that. We've never seen them take pills before. We see it in the opening scene, and then we see it here in the little, reintegration flash or whatever you want to call it. And that's enough for Mark. He leaves 6 minutes early, which I guess, Lumen seems like the kind of corporation that would really care about that, but he does it in a way that I don't, I can't tell if he just doesn't care or if he's done it before, maybe. But he gets in that elevator and they linger a minute. When Milchek gets in there, he puts his black card, which is, I think, similar to the security card that they had last year to get into the joint to do the OTC protocol. He puts it in there and it does something in the elevator, keeps the doors open there. They lingered on that shot for a minute. So I think once again, the card might come into play there. Perhaps they need that to access
Yep.
the elevator in the exports hall or the testing floor, whatever you want to call it there. And then Milchek in that elevator, right? He starts out, it's framed so well. You talk about the direction. You can literally see them in the two panels, and there's a line between them. And eventually, kind of Mark takes a step closer to the line, and then Milchek takes a big step. He crosses the line, and then he actually curses at Mark, asking, like, oh, did your Audi know that, or just wait till I tell you you fucked her Audi, or whatever the exact wording was.
Right.
First curse by Milchek on the show?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't know that we've ever heard him break that barrier before. I'm trying to think in season one. I don't think so.
He said he was going to tighten the leash, and just interesting, right? He literally crosses the line and then does something he's never done before. So you wonder what's going to be greater, his desire to keep his job or his desire to help the innies. They're definitely setting up a nice, character conflict here with Milchek. I'm really curious as to where they're going to go with this.
Tightening the leash, man.
Yeah, and again, they keep it up when Mark's leaving. His Audi also has the cough, which means it's physical, not psychological. We saw his innie cough, we saw his Audi cough, so it's something that's directly related to his body. And Helena just kind of creeping on Mark leaving there. Do you think maybe she's catching feelings? I think there are some theories about this. We'll save that to the very end here, but it does look like she's still intrigued by him. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some theories about her like, needing to get pregnant, for whatever reason, but yeah, there's a lot here, but we've seen that before. This isn't the first time. There was another beautiful shot of him walking out in the parking lot, and she's standing in the big window looking out. So this has been kind of now a couple times this season we've seen this.
Yeah, I feel like she's watching all of that footage at home every time that, every day she gets back, she wants to immediately know, what did my Audi do? But again, or what did my Audi do today? But this seems this is taking place over a very condensed timeline. We haven't even hit a week from the events of the season one finale, which makes it kind of surprising that when we get to the little check-in with Devin and Rickon, dude seems to have gone completely against his beliefs, right? He even refers to Natalie as Nat, like they're very close personal friends. And he seems to drop his facade just a little bit at the end when he's like, look, I'm never gonna have another opportunity of this, be a professional or creative or fiscal or creative opportunity, the way he phrases it. Do you think there's anything more than this? Does he just see this as his big chance? Or is he maybe, again, I don't know if a secret plan for Lumen or more inclined for them or something like that, because Devin points it out. This is basically a complete 180 from what he did before. It's not just reworking something, it's literally espousing a completely opposite belief.
Yeah, I think it's him feeding into his own ego and his ability to kind of get the fame and wealth he desires that I think deep down inside he knows he'll never be able to get without this. So, you're talking about the Lumen, Natalie playing into his weakness to manipulate him, and you're now seeing it working is really what I think is going on here. He's being used like a tool, like what Lumen does with anyone that they need to get something from.
So you're saying he's a Trojan's horse?
One might, one might say so.
Decent job. Not my favorite episode title, but you did a good job of tying it in there. And then finally, we get Bert. I always want to say Bert and Ernie, but it's Bert and Irving. Still don't know who he's calling on the phone. He literally says, I think they knew what my innie was up to. Do you think that meant exposing Helly as Helena? Or is it more complex than that? Is there a whole nother thing going on?
There could be because even before he exposes her, we saw the same thing, the walk to the payphone and then him, kind of dropping a clue that he somehow is in communication or knows what the innie's doing. And now we're seeing it again. It could be more complex than that, but we do know that his, obviously his plan, the only thing that I question about that is he didn't really kind of come to grips with that until he had that fever dream or that frostbite hypothermia dream in the woods. Like that's when he really
Right. So
started
it
to
seems
kind
like
of,
it might be something else.
yeah.
And just again, because he only made that phone call, we'll get to Bert in a second here, but he says Irving was at his house the other night. When somebody says the other night, I think 3 days ago, 2, 3 days. I think five max, right? Definitely within the week. So somewhere like 3 to 5 days, call it 3 to 5 business days since the end of season one. So it really hasn't been that long. Did you take anything away from Irving gathering up all his paintings of the dark hallway? Was he just
Yes.
making space for new ones? Was he going to throw them out? Did you think there was any intent there?
There's some sort of intent. I mean, he's staring at him just really intensely and then starts to take them all down and pack them up and then go and make that phone call. Something's going on. I don't know if he's starting to get paranoid, and he's trying to hide the evidence or what, but something's going on.
Yeah, and another thing that sets off my radar here is what Bert tells Irving, specifically that he, as an Audi, was told that he was fired because basically was having an inter-office relationship. Yet the Audi filmed the retirement video, which made it sound like he was being retired and not fired. So somebody is lying here. I guess you could just assume that it's Lumen, but perhaps there's some other reintegration going on here. Maybe there's another shoe to drop for Bert, because it's also interesting that he's not like, oh yeah, we should talk a little bit. He's like, no, come over for dinner. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
maybe not too big, too fast. And again, just great scene. Even Christopher Walken, the quirk thing, he can't help but sound like Christopher Walken. But it was so awesome that I don't really even care. Just absolutely fantastic here. What do you think? Anything kind of just tickling your radar here that maybe there's some more complexity to this than just the kind of surface level where you could get here?
He knows where Irving lives. So has he been following him for the last couple days? I mean, it's only been 4 or 5 days since season one ended, and and Irving showed up at his door. And part of those days, Irving's been working, right? He was just on a retreat. We got the feeling that that might have been a weekend thing. So it's like, when did he have time to like know all this stuff? How did he know he was going to be making that phone call right then again? Like he's got, what are you on, 24-hour surveillance here? Every time he leaves the house, you follow him. That's like, so something's going on there. And was this whole thing with Bert, you know, is Bert secretly working for Lumen as an Audi to try to bring down what Irving's Audi is trying to allow his Innie to do? And I don't know. There's something here though. And I guess we'll meet Fields. I don't know. Field, I guess we'll meet him. A little bit weird that he came and said, come over for dinner. And was he asking Irving to bring expensive red wine? Or was he saying that
Yes,
that's what we
yeah,
do?
that's not a very subtle way of doing it, but uh,
Yeah.
you know, again, it makes me think that he maybe knows more about Irving. Like, we know Irving's got some money. Remember when he gets fired? He's like, "Oh, when my any break stuff, like I got money. Like I'll go get money if it's just about money." So maybe he even knows that a little bit. I can't tell how much fan service is here, and I also can't tell. He makes it sound like a huge deal when he's like, "Oh, the hubby and I were supposed to go to Milwaukee and we had to cancel." I don't know. It's just the way he made it seem like going to Milwaukee was a big deal. And Milwaukee, good for you. Go Bucks, whatever. I don't really have anything against you, but really interesting. He made it sound like he was going to Disney World. It was Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I think that kind of speaks to, okay, so is this they're somewhere in the Midwest here, right? I mean, are they in Michigan? Are they in
I feel like
Illinois,
Canada's probably in play here. Like perhaps Lumen.
Canada?
What if Lumen has like a reservation type thing going on? They got to actually have like their own sovereign area, and that's why you don't have a regular license plate or a state name or that kind of thing. Like they basically have their own reservation or corporate zone or something like that, where they are their own sovereign whatnot.
Yeah.
So like leaving is a
You-
big deal, right? It's like a passport. You got to like you can't just drive to the next state or something. It's more complex than that. So
right,
canceling any trip to anywhere is a huge deal.
right.
So hopefully we get that one in the next episode. That brings us to the very end here. We already discussed this a little bit. The idea that Ragabi is going through Gemma's stuff. And Mark looks at the ashes and kind of the same thing he said on the inside about Irving. He's not dead. He's just not here. He expresses the same thing about her wife. Like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. She's not dead. She's just not here. Ragabi does say that they live in Kier. I guess that's what the town is called then. Have we actually ever heard that explicitly before? But she just says like in Kier, like that's what it's all called. So I'm just assuming that that's where they are. I don't.
Yeah, which again would speak to they've bought a bunch of land and they've got their employees living on it and they've created their own little, like
A
you
little
said,
fiefdom,
reservations.
right?
Yeah. And named it Kier, right? And wouldn't that speak to the cultishness and maybe the religious fanaticism about this too? I mean, it kind of you kind of start to see it bleeding together like that a little bit.
And do you think Ragabi, when Mark coughs in front of her, she didn't seem surprised? Do you think this is something she is aware of? Is it maybe tied to the stuff that he's drinking there?
Well, and it may be why he's taking those vitamins and taking those pills and drinking that stuff is to keep the immune system up because now he's going to be fighting something off or whatever. I mean, I think it's definitely tied together. They made a point to let us know he's coughing and he's not, and she even says, are you okay? And he's like, basically, like I mean he not really, but like kind of. And so I think that's an interesting angle there too.
Right, not coughing up blood yet, but it's still only season one of Breaking Bad at that point, I would assume. Everything from that point forward is basically perfect. We talked about the direction, but the cinematography, the sound design, everything when he starts hearing Gemma's voice, and then we start getting the affirmations he got in season one, and then you get the hallway. That shot he goes in when, dude, when he opens the door and Mark's Audi sticks his head into the hallway there. That is just, it's one of those things you've kind of been waiting for. Into the show's credits, this is only episode 15, I think, so it's not like we've been waiting, or episode 14. We haven't been waiting a million years for this or anything, but I think the 3 year wait made it seem more. And then, of course, you get the shot of Ms. Casey and the episode ends. I just want to again give it up for Adam Scott here. I've always enjoyed him so much comedically that I don't think he really gets his due as an actor sometimes. Does an absolutely fantastic job here.
Yeah. Yeah, he really does. Again, the facial acting, just the you can see it. And shout out to him. Mills, I think we're at the point where we should save everything for our predictions here at the end of the episode and go ahead and get into the award tour for Trojan's Horse. First up, we got our favorite alternate titles for the episode. What we come up with for this one?
If we could use some of Dylan's F bombs, it would be better, but that's not really how the show goes. They like their, very short titles that kind of have a greater meaning. So we're going to stick with what they usually do. We have three for you here. Number three, we're going to give it up for Milchek here, tightening the leash. It does make a lot of sense. It is happening here. It also, the show is kind of, bringing the walls in around Milchek a little bit, tightening the leash on him. So he tightens it on the Innies. Mark's trying to tighten the leash on Ragabi. Makes a little bit of sense all the way down. Number two, maybe it's just because Christopher Walken said it, but call it a quirk. And again, that could be even referred to the dual personalities here, the differences they have between them, especially with Helly here trying to figure out what her other self was doing there. So call it a quirk, number two. And then number one makes a ton of sense here, just not here, no pun intended. We hear Mark say it twice, both as an innie, as an outie. We're trying to think about the ways they are connected in here it is. They both take one thing and they view it the exact same way. They say the same thing. That's the kind of duality we're looking for here. A little bit of insight into the innies and outies. So those are our three alternate episode titles: Tightening the Leash, Call It a Quirk, and Just Not Here. Although if you wanted to throw expensive red wine in there, don't throw it. Just give us the bottle.
Please. Stop number two on the award tour is our favorite quotes. Mills, what was your favorite bit of dialogue here from this episode titled Trojan's Horse?
There were a couple here. I could throw some urinalysis in here, but I don't suppose we need to do that right now. So I'm just going to go with the early exchange between Milchek and Dylan.
Irving B's Audi has departed on an elongated cruise voyage.
I don't give three dry fucks about his Audi.
Again, where did Dylan learn how to curse? And can I go there and or watch it or listen to the podcast or what have you? Because the man knows how to drop an F-bomb. Jamie G, how about you? Favorite quote for Trojan's Horse?
He really, really does. I got to go with that exchange between Irving and Bert.
You, why are you following me? I got this thing. When somebody shows up on my doorstep screaming my name, I want to know why. Call it a quirk.
That was almost
Great.
Christopher Walken doing a Christopher Walken impression. It was so on brand, just the way he says quirk. It's almost no one else could do that. So just absolutely fantastic all the way around there.
Great stuff, man. Had to be my top spot. Next up on the ward tour here, we're going to go our favorite scene or moment from the episode. I'm up first here, Mills. I'm going to go when with Milicek tightens the leash and confronts Mark in the elevator. We talked about it when he starts in there and he's always had this presence that's somewhat scary, but then he really starts to lean into it, man. And when he takes that step and gets so close you can smell Mark's breath, it was intimidating and scary, and you can see him tightening the leash, and then he threw out basically that threat there that he will let her know if he doesn't comply. Good stuff there, man. Just a really intense scene, shot super well in the elevator.
What would be absolutely crazy if somehow Milchek cracks what's going on because he smells that stuff that Mark is drinking on his breath and figures the whole thing out based on that. That would be some real Sherlock stuff from back in the day. Wow, I haven't thought about Sherlock in a minute. Shout out to the mid aughts there remake of Sherlock. That was a good time. I am going to just go with Irving's funeral. A couple of good contenders here, but everything about that was great, especially the eulogy. Loved everything about it. It was fun. It was funny. It was weird. It moved the plot forward. All good stuff there. So I'm going with Irving's funeral.
Love that. It is time to hand out the major hardware here, starting with our episode MVP.
Ooh, so far, episode 1, I went Dylan. Episode 2, Milchek. Episode 3, Mark. Episode 4, Irving. I am probably going with a repeat winner here, one way or the other. It was a close one, but I think I'm going with Dylan. Just so many good lines here. Like I said, my favorite scene was the funeral there. You had the big eulogy from him. You had him finding Irving's map. I love the way he kind of tried to give it to Milchek in the opening scene there. So even though we don't get a ton from Dylan, love him here. Jamie G, you're up next. Episode 1, you went Milchek. Episode 2, Helena. Episode 3, Dylan. Episode 4, Irving. You have somebody new for us? Or are you doubling up as well?
Yeah, I wanted to go the doctor with the whistle, but I couldn't bring myself there, Mills. I'm going to double up and go with Milchek here. Just look, he was under a lot of pressure. You're starting to see kind of the moral compass in him have to choose between what he thinks is right and wrong. How much Kool-Aid does he want to drink? How hard can he press to keep everything together? It's been kind of unraveling under his leadership here. And I think he just did an outstanding job kind of showing the humanness of him, but also trying to tote the company line here. Just a smooth operator, dude. I just big fan of Milchek.
I could see Milchek after, Ariel Trojan, like the actor in a post-Severance career, he could be the new, like, Corona guy or Dos Equis guy or something, but then they use smooth operator with him. He's got the blue
Yeah.
turtleneck and everything on with the mustache. He's a smooth operator. I feel like that would be an excellent liquor or beer commercial. Just throwing that out there.
Nothing wrong with that. I mean, he doesn't always drink a Dos Equis, but when he does,
He drinks this horrible white shit from Marquez's fridge.
final stop on the award tour is our episode grades. We are grading each episode on a scale of 0 to 100 Kier coins. I'm up first here, Mills. Episode 1, I rated it 83 coins. Episode 2, 84 coins. Episode 3, 86 coins. Episode 4, I went way up to 94 coins. I'm coming back down to earth here just a little bit, giving episode 5, 88 Kier coins.
That feels about right. I am very much in the same universe. I said before this felt very similar to episode 3 of the season, so I'm going to give it the exact same grade, 87 Cure coins. A little bit more than the first 2 episodes. I feel like those were basically halves of the same episode. I probably would have graded it higher if they had just been one super giant episode. So 87 Cure coins figures to be about perfect here. Hopefully, they're staying right there. Super high floor. Hope to get back in the 90s soon.
As always, we have saved the best for last. We're closing out the episode by discussing our favorite theories, questions, predictions, all the good stuff we love about the show here. Mills, go ahead and kick us off by telling us about the next episode.
Season 2, Episode 6 is titled Attila. The short plot synopsis is bonds are tested. Mark continues on his pathway of discovery. We have a first-time director and writer of this one, although the director will also be directing the penultimate episode of Season 2, Episode 9. So I kind of wonder if they're going to kind of continue something here forward throughout the rest of the season. And they tease a little bit. Mark continues on his path of discovery. Do you think that means reintegration or something else?
I think it means reintegration, but also just kind of discovering things that maybe he shouldn't, both as an outie and an innie. And I think he's going to have to kind of cross some bridges here, both in his outside world and his innie world. And I think we're kind of coming to a head with some of that stuff with Mark S. I mean, we saw him in this one kind of be detached and depressed. I think that the ball's going to hit the wall here really soon with him. He's going to have to make a decision on how he handles Helly at work and what he prioritizes externally and what's going on with the lady living with him.
And bonds are tested. I'm going to go with it's the bond between Milchek and Lumen. What do you think when they refer to bonds are tested? Who are they referring to? Is it Mark and Helly? That feels like the obvious one. I'm going with Lumen and Milchek. What bonds do you think are being tested in episode 6?
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I also could see myself maybe going Dylan and Lumen because Lumen's been giving him those extra perks, but now he's found the map and he needs to listen to his heart, right? With Irving. And he didn't listen to him before. Will he now and risk the perks? So I think that might be something there too.
Now I just wish I had enough time to edit a mashup of Dylan and Irving to Roxette's Listen to Your Heart. I wish I had the time for that. How about Milchek's performance review? Do you think his actual job is in trouble?
I don't know that it's in trouble, but I think he's going to be under pressure. And I think it's basically like no more doing things your way. You are going to follow the exact company order, and this is what it's going to be going forward.
Do you think this is all a way to set up the eventual return of Mrs. Copel? Like Milchek's so ineffective, they have to finally bring her back and give her what she wants.
Maybe, but I think something else is going on with her, and I think she finds her way back in where she forces the hand. I know she tried it once or twice here and it didn't work, but I think her relenting and coming back. I don't know that it'll be Lumen's, push. I think might be hers.
Well, it feels they have to do something. I don't want to say incredible with Cobell, but they've sidelined her for so long. This reminds me of the classic Simpsons episode where Homer gets the mob to help Marge sell her pretzels from her little pretzel wagon she's working in her car. Then at the very end, the Italian mob with Fat Tony faces off against the Yakuza, and Marge gets mad at Homer. He makes him go inside. He's like, dude, there's this little one guy from the Yakuza, just this little guy. He's not doing anything. I know as soon as I stop looking, it's going to be awesome. And then she brings him inside to lecture him, and you just kind of look through the kitchen window and you just see this crazy little Yakuza doing all these flips and everything and killing everybody. Just super good stuff. And I feel like that's Mrs. Goldbell here, right? Like we're all waiting, we're all waiting. And when she gets her moment, it's going to be something big. My prediction is we get mostly a flashback episode of some sort, maybe showing her origin, maybe showing what happened with Mark and Jenna, with Mark and Gemma, as far as how that happened, and then kind of climaxing with her being brought back to Lumen, or we find out what her plan is, something like that. I feel like if they've left her sideline this far, it's go big or go home, right? I'm going to be kind of disappointed if it's just little bits and pieces of an appearance by Patricia Arquette as Mrs. Cobell here. Like I feel like they're holding back for something major. Do you agree with me, or do you think maybe they just didn't know what to do with the character?
No, I hope not, because I mean, then that's a real miss because you could see just the intensity of Patricia Arquette and how great she was kind of thinking and her face acting and the way she would look at you and stuff. Like there's something going on there. And plus there's so many questions left over from how season one ended that I hope they don't just like yada 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 at that and look the other way. I want to know why she had an interest in the baby. I want to know why she was living next door. Like there's all these things. Plus, they tease the interaction between her and Mark. Feels like eventually she's not going to be able to drive away, and there's going to have to be that big explosion between those two, right? So I think something big's coming with her.
Yeah, and I'm hoping again that we get some insight both into her background and to what her plan is now. If they're all in one giant episode, or be it just you don't have a lot of focus on other characters in it or something, I'm cool with it. They spread it out a little bit, but we haven't gotten much from her in the first half of season two. Hope to get a lot more in the back half. Let's go through kind of a couple of random theories. One is that Miss Wang is actually Mark and Gemma's child. I don't really like that one. I don't know that it fits. There's never really been any indication that they had a child, so I don't know. That one doesn't really work for me. Any thoughts on that one? It's fairly popular, but I think that's probably a bridge too far.
I think it's tough. She's old. I mean, I didn't strike me that they were married that long. Like, I kind of felt like they were still in the honeymoon phase, maybe considering getting a dog, not yet having kid phase, kind of. It didn't seem like they were married that long to have a 15-year-old. Yeah. No mention, no pictures. I mean, he's got boxes full of Gemma's stuff. You tell me in any of those pictures, there's not something of his daughter. All the talks about the accident. Oh, his wife and daughter didn't die. I don't know, man. I think that's a stretch.
I do as well. How about a couple Irving things here, starting with who is he calling? I kind of like the idea we were talking about. There's another shoe to drop here for Bert. The idea that he doesn't know who he's calling, he's just leaving messages for somebody, and it's actually Bert, and Bert is kind of working both sides of it. So that's kind of my little theory here. He could be calling Cobell, maybe someone with the resistance, someone we don't know. Who do you think Irving is calling?
I have no idea here. This one's really got me stumped. I thought it was Cobell. I really thought maybe he was working with her. But now I'm just like, I have no idea. I mean, one that's like kind of a creeper is what if it's Felicia's Audi? They had a little bit of chemistry and just kind of trust, and it looked like built up just intellectual respect for each other. I don't know if that's anything more than just that, but I'm struggling with this one. It's got to be somebody.
Right. It would feel a little weird if it's someone we don't know, unless it's someone who's introduced as the head of the Severance Resistance or something like that, and they're going to be a bigger player going forward. I guess that would
The
probably
lady
be
doing
okay.
the Mark's reintegration. I mean, that could be something too. Like maybe she's not just doing
Yeah,
Mark's,
Ragabi's definitely
because
on the
Mark made the comment, this is like the second time you've done this. Well, maybe not. She didn't confirm or deny that.
right. That's where I was going. Do you think Irving was reintegrated previously? Because he says, I think they figured out what my innie was up to. How does he know what his innie was up to?
Right.
But he doesn't
Right.
have the full knowledge, right? Because if he did, he could have told exactly what happened. But he doesn't, so he doesn't have the full picture. But he seems to have some idea, which means either if he's not reintegrated, they figured out a way to communicate.
And they would know if he was doing what Helly was doing and pretending to be his Audi while being in, right?
Yeah, I never
Like they
got
would
that feeling.
they would have to know that. So I never got that either, but I'm just trying to figure out how he could know that, how he knew about that, why he was drawing all there's just a lot going on with Irv that we need to figure out.
And just thank God that John Turturro's still on the show. It is kind of cool like this. You can kind of kill off a character but keep the actor around a little bit. Again, similar to Westworld, they were able to pull the same kind of trick. I am there for it. We've established that it's been less than a week since the season one finale. What do you think the timeline is ultimately going to be for season two? Because as of now, it feels like the whole season is going to take place over 2 weeks or so. Do you think they're going to keep this up, or do you think they're going to start spacing stuff out a little more?
I don't know. It seems to be working. It's not necessarily causing a ton of problems. I mean, it's creating some logistical stuff as you're wondering like how, but I think there's already so much of that within the show that it doesn't really matter that much. Again, you start taking big gaps, all of a sudden now you got to explain it. Did Miss Wong grow? Mark's niece, is she older? There's just different things here that you got to start to address. So I don't know that they need to start doing big gaps. I mean, it's possible if the story goes that way, but I don't see it right now. I mean, it's just kind of fast and furious with this Cold Harbor project.
The only problem they'll run into is if they take another 3 years off between seasons and try to make it be like the whole thing's take place over 3 weeks, they're going to be in trouble because people are going to start getting old at that point. It will have been like 6 years since the first season was filmed. I think that's about right, though. Maybe they could do a little skipping. It feels like season one took place over a couple of months. So I guess they could accelerate the timeline a little bit, but I don't think they can do it to a large extent. How about the data refining itself? That's one thing that seemed to be a big deal in season one was Helly learning how to refine the data. It doesn't seem like as big of a deal here. I wonder, do you have to be an innie to be able to refine the data? So when Helena was here, could she not do any work because only innies can do it? Is that part of the deal? That's not a question I really had before, but I kind of thought of it after really trying to think about what the implications were of Helena actually replacing Helly and why Cold Harbor matters so much.
Yeah, and you couldn't really, looking back to start this season, they haven't done a lot of work, right? I mean, we had the episode where her and Mark wander off and the goats. We had the episode where they're out at the retreat in the woods, and then we had a couple of outie stuff. So we really haven't had a ton of any of them doing work other than a little bit of Dylan, where he decides to stay in and do the work, and then Mark. There just hasn't been the focus on the work, whereas in season one, there was a large focus on the work. So I don't know. I mean, it could feed into that. That could be the reason why, or it could just be that they're just not spending as much time on it because they got so much other stuff going on.
How much further do you think we're going to get into reintegration this season? The way they're doing it, it doesn't seem like there's really going to be a moment in the near future where all of a sudden the two personalities meld and both them know everything. It seems like it's going to be kind of a more gradual slippage. I am cool with that. I just wonder if they're going to really start messing with the time a little bit like Westworld style, like when Mark sees Gemma slash Ms. Casey again, maybe that's where we get the flashback of what actually happened and find out how she died and was resurrected or didn't die or whatever. I feel like once she comes back, maybe you could delay those answers, but I feel like we kind of need those answers and they should kind of be tied into it.
Yeah, I think so. And because it all kind of goes hand in hand. And the one thing you don't want to do is just, answer a piece, answer one fifth of a question, but create three more questions within answering the one fifth, because you're just never going to catch up. So I think they kind of have to knock out a couple of things at once, especially when they're so closely tied together.
That's funny. It's without meaning to. You basically made a direct reference to Lost when they had their big mythology episode in the final season, and the lady's like, "Well, you can't ask me a question because every answer I give you will just lead to more questions. So we're not gonna do any of that. So sometimes you don't want to dive maybe too deep into it. What do you think Dylan is going to do with those directions? Does he give them to somebody else? Does he try to follow them? Does he turn him into Milchek to get his, to avoid getting his visitation privileges revoked? What do you think he's going to do with that knowledge?
I think he's going to wait and see what's going on with Mark and Helly and if he can have his team together. And then I think he's going to probably try to act on it with them because I think he owes it. I think he feels like he owes it to Irv. And, you saw his humanist side come out here as an innie where he was the only one that was really like straight up like bothered a lot by the fact that Irving was dead. Mark refused to acknowledge that he was dead, that he just wasn't here anymore. Helly was so weirded out and trying to figure out everything about her. She was kind of mood on the point a little bit. It just didn't matter that much to her. It mattered to Irving or to Dylan a lot. And you saw it at the end of that last episode in season four where he basically, I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. Like, I don't know that he's just going to throw away those feelings. He was already starting to rebel a little bit. I know Milchek tried to put him back in line with threatening to take away the rights. And I know that Milchek's tightening the leash here. But I don't know, man. This feels like it might be Dylan's Alamo moment where he's got to kind of take a stand here and do what he feels is right. And that's to kind of figure out what Irving was trying to tell him.
Well, I don't remember where I read this. This was someone else's theory. I can't take credit for it, but for the life of me, I don't remember where I read it. But the idea was if you actually look in the intro for season two and you slow it down, there is a picture of appears to be Helly going into that elevator at the end of the dark hallway there. So the theory has been that in her effort to prove herself to Mark, somehow she gets her hands on this and she takes it upon herself to go there and try to rescue Ms. Casey. And that's, what the reference is from the intro. And the intro's been out with stuff. We saw the Mark balloons. We even see the stuff he's drinking. There's a quick shot of that in there too. Him passed out with that jar of that stuff right next to him. So maybe all the answers we're looking for are in the intro the whole time.
It might be, and I'm okay with that if they sprinkle it in. I love this intro. I haven't skipped it once, and I don't see myself skipping it the entire season. It's fantastic.
And they can keep changing it, but I remember us wanting so much out of the House of the Dragon intro because Game of Thrones intro was so epic. But they would
Yeah.
change it just slightly here if they want to revamp it every season. I'm okay with that too. But yeah, this is already a god tier intro sequence, and if they keep this up with a potential season three, season four, whatever, I am there for all of it. And the fact that they're tying it in to the actual plot points of the show and it almost being a little bit spoilerish at times, I think is super awesome. As much as I want to know more about the backstory of some of the looming characters, Natalie is becoming more and more interesting, right? Because she was kind of a periphery character in season one. She seemed to just basically be a conduit for communicating with the board, and it seems like she's taking on greater significance here. So I am very kind of curious as to what her actual role is.
Yeah, same. And we're, just like we're seeing the rise of Mr. Drummond, I think we're seeing the rise of Natalie here. And, she's going out, she's working on projects externally with Rickon. She's kind of got the whole thumb over Milchek here. I mean, it's just there's she's clearly his superior, right? And so it's an interesting development here in terms of who she is and what she's trying to do. We still don't know that, and they've been deliberate about it, I guess, in some regards. For a while, it looked like Helena was calling the shots, particularly during those interactions with Cobell. Now it looks like maybe Drummond and Natalie are calling the shots. So I can't wait to kind of figure out how it all works.
I am right there with you. I love all the Lumen stuff. One last bit. Any idea where they're going with Rickon and Devin? I'm just worried about Devin because she seems like she wants to, just to flip shit over, cause some drama, and figure out what happens and try to get some answers. I'm worried about her. Rickon, it's probably more of a slow burn to see if he's really going to help Lumen or he's just kind of a useful idiot or what have you. Devin's one I'm worried about.
Yeah, I am too, because I think she has the intelligence, the moral compass, and the dedication to kind of solve some stuff. And I think that Lumen also knows that. And part of this whole thing with manipulating Rickon could be as a means to keep an eye on Devin. And you could see them like, this is what causes me to be in your life, and now I can keep an eye on you. So we'll placate to Rickon to make sure that we keep an eye on you so that you don't do anything. Because remember, they talked about that early in the first episode or second episode when we saw Mr. Drummond out spying on people listening in the cafe and everything. So the diner. So yeah, I think so.
I am right there with you. I'm worried about her. I think we're going to get some development on that, but I bet you it's a little bit of a slow burn, so maybe not a big move till we get to the end of the season. So that's about all I got. You got any other theories or whatever? Again, I'm enjoying all this. Keep doing what you're doing, show. Good stuff. Anything else? Any other theories? Anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's it for right now, Mills. I mean, we covered a lot here. There's so many different angles. They literally have, seven, eight, nine things kind of percolating here. It'll be really cool to see how they tie this and land this season. We're getting close to the halfway point here, right? If we haven't gotten
We're
into it
exactly
yet.
halfway. Yeah.
They're at exactly halfway, so there's 10 episodes. We got five more to go. So this back half, I think, is really going to tell us a lot. And one thing I like about the show is that it doesn't seem like they're slow rolling. They're going all in. So I cannot wait to see these next five episodes.
Same, brother. I am right there with you.
And we cannot wait to talk about them with you. Thank you guys for checking out another episode of My Cousin Innie. We got that cousin. He's a big fan, and he might also be an innie. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you throw the thumb. We love talking about this show. It's so fun, but part of the fun is discussing the theories and the predictions. So let us know your best theories, predictions. You agree with something we said, you think different, let us know. You can always drop a comment below or slide in the DMs. Mills will let you know where you can find our social medias. Interact with us there. Let's get the crazy theories out there, man. Tell us everything we're missing. Tell us what you're thinking. That's the fun of this show. Let's enjoy it while it's here. Mills will let you know where you can find all our details.
Thanks again for checking out My Cousin Innie. We are presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff. Same place on the web, dudeswatchstuff.com. Simple and easy to remember, just like those flaps, FLAPS. Again, very important to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, make sure that you press that thumb. I am Magna Mills. He's Jamie G. Thanks again for checking out the show, and we will see you next time the elevator door opens or closes.
Thank you, Dylan G. A little sugar with your usual salt. Thank you for your attendance and your participation. You may now briefly partake in Irving's Fruit Head, whose dark hair is courtesy of the Black Beauty watermelon from the country of Malaysia. Miss Wong.